Right now, Siege has 73 operators across attack and defense, and throughout all those operators, none of them have been nerfed as many times as the operator I'm going to be talking about in this video. This operator has gone from being one of the best operators in the game and being the only one to fill his role, to nowadays being a shell of his former self and not even being the best at his role, and a lot of players think it was all for no reason. So let's dive into the story of the most nerfed operator in Rainbow Six Siege history. December 1st of 2015, Rainbow Six Siege was released with 20 unique operators, each having their own ability. But there was only 2 in the game who could soft breach, and the one that I'm going over in this video is Sledge. In the early days of Rainbow Six Siege, Sledge was seen as easily one of the top 5 best attackers, with his sledgehammer ability allowing you to destroy non-reinforced surfaces to create lines of sight, rotates between rooms, and play vertically. He had easily one of the best abilities, and he had an incredible loadout with the hard-hitting L8 primary assault rifle and one of the best secondaries in the game in the SMG-11, and on top of that he had the best secondary gadget and frag grenades. To say he was strong would be an understatement, and his pick rates would reflect that, as he was one of the most top picked operators in the game. Sledge would remain very strong with only slight buffs to his ability and slight nerfs to the SMG-11's recoil, and the SMG-11 also losing the ACOG. These changes wouldn't change Sledge that much, and he would still be seen as one of the best operators in the game and one of the most picked operators because of it. Now, Sledge would stay this way for the next 3 years with little change, which is pretty long time for me to be calling Sledge the most nerfed operator in Rainbow Six Siege, but as you're going to see with the release of Operation Crystal Guard, Sledge would lose his SMG-11. Now obviously this is a significant nerf to Sledge and made him weaker, but the backlash from the community was even bigger. The SMG-11 is easily one of the best guns in the game and one of the most beloved guns in the game because of how fun it is to use, and when it's removed from any operator there's going to be backlash. And most people saw no reason for Sledge to be nerfed. Yes, he was strong, but people felt he was in a good spot in terms of balancing. But on the other hand, some people thought the nerf was fine as Sledge was pretty strong. But that would not be the case for the next nerf, as Sledge would receive a speed reduction from a 2-speed to a 1-speed. While not being the biggest nerf ever, this would definitely make Sledge worse, as he wouldn't be able to run from C4s as fast, he can't rotate from the holes he's created as fast, he's much louder when playing vertical. It just made no sense. And of course with this, his pick rates would drop. Before his SMG-11 nerf, Sledge was the most played attacker in the game, and right after the nerf he dropped to 3rd, and after the speed nerf it would be dropped to 5th. Now you might be saying he's still one of the most played operators, but that's largely due to him being one of only 2 operators with the gadgets made for vertical play. And when you have a role that unique, you're going to be played pretty much no matter what. But as you will see, that will be changing. With the release of Operation Heavy Metal, a new operator named Ram would be released. Now Sledge did not see any direct changes, so you might be asking, what does this have to do with Sledge? Well, Ram was also another soft breacher, and specifically she fell under the vertical play operator role, which as you know, Sledge is also a vertical play operator. So to dive deeper into why this affects Sledge, we'll have to look at which operator is stronger. Sledge's ability allows him to create controlled holes to play vertically or to create lines of sight. While less controllable, Ram does Sledge's job better while being much safer. She can also create a lot of noise to mask rotations or the plant, as well as her ability being remotely activated, so she can make a lot of plays off of that. The only thing Sledge does better is the controllability aspect. While Sledge does have a good loadout, Ram's is much better as she has one of the best loadouts on all of attack. And on top of that, Ram is slightly more versatile due to her remotely activated ability. So with Ram and Buck both being better at the role of vertical play, Sledge's value would drop drastically. But even with all of the nerfs to Sledge, he was still seen as a solid operator due to how well-rounded he was, and he was also one of the only operators with grenades, so he was still a viable pick. And he was still one of the most played operators in the game, especially on PC. But that would not stay the same for long, as another major nerf was coming to Sledge in the form of his grenades. With the release of Operation Deep Freeze, Ubisoft would remove the ability to cook grenades, which removes the best way to use grenades in nading below. If you don't know what that means, basically before the grenade nerf, your operator would pull the pin on the grenade immediately and you would have 4.5 seconds before the grenade exploded. The way that you could use this to your advantage is if you time the grenade's explosion to right before it hit the soft floor below a defender or a defender's utility like a shield, it would go through the floor and kill or destroy anything on the other side. Now this was very strong as there was pretty much no way to counter it other than standing on hard surfaces, so having access to that, especially when you take into account how little operators had grenades at the time, just for him having this ability to nade below, he still had great value. But when you take away the ability to nade below, grenades go from easily the best secondary gadget in the game to being around on par with a lot of the other secondary gadgets in the game, and that really leads us to the present day. And now when you look at Sledge, he doesn't really have any redeeming factors. Really, there's no reason to pick him over any vertical play operator or just any soft breacher. I mean, you have some of the best operators on attack filling in Sledge's role with Buck, Ash, and Ram all being amazing. And you could make the argument for Sledge being the worst soft breacher in the game right next to Zofia. Even though I don't think that's the case, it's definitely not absurd. And when you look at what he used to be, I mean, a great ability, one of only 2 soft breachers in the game, great loadout in the L8 and the SMG-11, pre-nerf grenades, and with Sledge competing with some of the best operators in the game right now, I do think he's underpowered. And really that leads us to the next question on how he should be changed. And to start off, we should look at the things that don't need to be changed from Sledge, and starting with his loadout, his primary weapon, the L8, is great, having no recoil, very good damage and fire rate, and just overall solid. And then you have his ability, which is solid, being able to play vertical, destroy utility and gadgets, and having so many uses. His hammer is great. And then you have his secondary gadgets, which at least are pretty versatile, with grenades for destroying utility and flushing enemies out of their positions, stun grenades for also flushing enemies out of their positions and just making plays by killing blinded enemies. And then you have a more of a support based gadget in impact EMPs, which does bring a lot of value if you have a strat in mind that makes them useful. And overall, those aspects of Sledge are pretty solid and don't really need changing for the most part. But now we have the aspects of Sledge I would change, and the first of which is being his secondary weapon. His pistol is alright, but I mean, come on, it's a pistol. What I would like to see is if they add the SMG-11 back, it would give a lot more people of a reason to play Sledge over other operators, as no one on attack has ever had the SMG-11 other than Sledge and Amaru. It adds a lot of uniqueness to Sledge and overall a lot of value, as having the SMG-11 in your pocket to switch to when you run out of bullets in the L8 or when you have to take a more close range gunfight, it's great. The next thing I would change to buff Sledge would be reverting him back to a 2-speed. Now, this won't drastically change Sledge, but he will still be able to make faster plays, move faster from the holes he's created, and just make less sound. So overall, just changing his speed would be very beneficial for him. And that's really all I would change to make him more relevant in the meta to compete with operators like Ash, Buck, and Ram. With these changes, he would bridge the gap between a run and gun operator like Ash and a more slow and methodical fragger like Ram, with him being a 2-speed and a quiet and easy to use fast operator. And on top of that, he would have an even better loadout with the SMG-11. Sledge would be a super fun and strong operator to use. And in the comments, let me know how you think Sledge should be changed, if you think he should be changed at all. I mean, like I said, he is the second worst soft breacher in the game and the worst vertical play operator. So when there's an operator like that, they either need to be buffed or operators like Ash, Buck, and Ram need to be nerfed. And I don't think they need to be nerfed, so the obvious course of action is to buff Sledge. But with what we saw with Nook, if you don't know, I made a similar video about Nook and how she's underpowered and overshadowed by a lot of other operators. Ubisoft doesn't really like to revert changes that they've made to operators, whether it be whether it be nerfs or buffs. And the changes that I think should be Sledge are obviously reverted changes Ubisoft has already made. So who knows what Ubisoft is going to do to Sledge, if they're going to do something similar to Nook where they buff the most unimportant part of the operator, or if they even change Sledge at all. But if you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing, and if you want to see more of my content, then click the video popping up on your screen.